But we start this hour in the Middle East, and multiple blasts were seen and heard in Gaza after Israel's political security cabinet approved a plan to take control of Gaza City. The cabinet's approval came hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel intended to take military control of the entire Strip. Meanwhile, Israeli citizens have been protesting in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, demanding an immediate release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza and an end to the war. According to reports, Israeli police clashed with demonstrators in Tel Aviv during the protest. Reports indicate that police could be seen using water cannons to disperse crowds as protesters chanted slogans, lit flares and held up banners bearing images of those still held hostage. Well, joining us to discuss all of these developments, we have Alan Pinkas, the former Israeli ambassador, joining us live from Tel Aviv. Alan, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us here on NewsX World. Let's first cover the initial point I raised with visuals and hearings of strikes and blasts taking place in Gaza after this announcement from Benjamin Netanyahu and confirmation from the Security Cabinet that Israel plans to take military control of the whole of Gaza. Do you think this is now the start of that operation?
I don't know if tactically it is the start, but let's not forget, sir, that the war hasn't stopped. It hasn't receded. It hasn't. There was no pause or cessation of hostilities in the last few days. So what you're seeing in Gaza now may just be a continuation of previous operations. According to the plan that the Security Cabinet approved unanimously, as was expected, it's not like there was a major debate or deliberation. Only the military chief of staff objected very adamant reservations to the plan. But according to the plan that they approved, the entire population of Gaza City, the biggest city inside the Gaza Strip, needs to first be evacuated before any military takeover of Gaza takes place. Now, in that context, let's not forget that Israel already controls around 70% of the Gaza Strip. So this is not occupying an unknown territory, an uncharted area. Gaza has been devastated, and Gaza is already controlled by the Israeli military over 70% of its territory. So we need to wait and see how this occupation that Israel is hesitant to call it occupation so as not to bear the consequences of the occupation. We'll have to see. I doubt you will see anything major militarily in the next few days, though.
Yes, Alan, let's look at responses that could be coming from this move from Israeli military personnel. Of course, you mentioned there that there was some kickback to this plan. There have also been experts talking about the risks that might be there for hostages. Do you think that this is the last straw for the IDF? And also, do you think that there will be potential safety risks for these hostages being held? Of course, a key point of Israel's goal in continuing this military action within the Gaza enclave.
Well, you know, however imperfect Israeli democracy is, it is still a democracy in the sense that the military takes its orders from the civilian government, from the political echelons. So when you call it a last straw, I think we're going to have to wait and see, because the level of toxicity and the level of animosity that now exists between the top layer of the military and the prime minister is such that it could explode any day, and that would then we would look back, you and I, and say it was the last straw. Now, but it's important for our viewers to understand why the military is opposed to this. Ostensibly, it's about endangering the lives or even sacrificing the lives of at least 21 living hostages. The chief of staff has been saying in his own voice that any kind of occupation of the entire Gaza Strip and any kind of encirclement of areas where the hostages are believed to be severely endangers their lives. That's one thing, but there's a bigger issue here. I mean, nothing is bigger than human life, of course, but there's a bigger political and strategic issue. The military is basically saying there's no such thing as half occupation. There's no such thing as temporary occupation. There's no such thing as occupying militarily but not providing the civilian governance and the humanitarian aid on the other side. Meaning, the chief of staff says, Lieutenant General Zamir, he's saying, you want to occupy Gaza? We're going to have to run Gaza, and we are not necessarily prepared, equipped for this mission. What are the political goals? Because according to the cabinet meeting from last night or throughout the night, it stated 5 principles to end the war. The last and fifth principle states that a civilian government will be established that is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. Well, so who's going to manage Gaza? Not India, not Thailand, and not Argentina. So this is imaginary, and the military chief of staff basically said, "Look, it's going to fall on our shoulders, and we're not prepared to do this." So this could be a major confrontation in the next few weeks between, again, the IDF and the government.
Yes, Alan, I'm conscious of time. I have a couple more points that we're going to go through very quickly. Of course, reactions as well will be expected from world leaders, from NGOs, from groups like the UN after this announcement and once this operation gets underway. How do you think that this expansion and military ruling of Gaza will be seen? Do you think it will bring more condemnation, and will it put more pressure on the global scale for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Undoubtedly. Let's not forget that this decision is coming after, in the last 10 days, France, the UK, and Canada all announced that they intend to recognize a future Palestinian state. This on top of 147 countries in the UN that had already recognized the Palestinian state. So I do see that on both a political and a humanitarian basis, you're going to see more condemnation and isolation of Israel. And the most important thing, I know we are time conscious, the most important thing is that this is being done presumably with a green light from the US, but effectively it makes Mr. Trump's pledges and commitments to end the war look very hollow and ineffective in retrospect.
Yes, and Alan, finally, reports of protests in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv as well, with reports of police clashes specifically in Tel Aviv, of course, where you're joining us live from. Did you see anything? And also, what is the feeling and rhetoric coming from?
I actually live right next to where the demonstrations were held, and I did see the clashes with the police. But the demonstration was relatively small from what you would expect given the decision. We'll have to wait a few days to see if it expands.
Very briefly, Alan, what is the rhetoric coming from the Israeli people now around this war? Of course, almost 2 years have gone since those devastating October 7th attacks. Is there more frustration than there seems, or is it small pockets of discontent?
No. There's much more discontent than you would think. You look at the polls, consistently over 65%, 70, in fact, percent of the population does not support Mr. Netanyahu, wants the war to end. But there's also, at the same time, a level of fatigue and dejection. And people are still somewhat devastated from what had happened during the Hamas terror attack of October 7, 2023. So these demonstrations focused until now on the hostages. Right now, with the hostages' lives at stake, and even an authority like the chief of staff himself says we are endangering them beyond doubt, you may see bigger demonstrations.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, further questions could be raised about the situation for civilians living in Gaza as well. We don't have time for that now, Alan.